At 2 a.m., I got a call from my younger brother, the one who owns half of Las Vegas nightlife. He said, "Connor, your wife just checked into the $80 million penthouse using your credit card with another man." I was half asleep on the couch, the TV still humming with some old late-night show reruns, when my phone lit up on the coffee table. I blinked disoriented, then saw the caller ID. "Logan." I sat up straighter and answered. Logan never called after midnight, not unless something was wrong. "You know where Emily is?" he asked without preamble. I rubbed my eyes. "No." "Why? What's going on?" There was a pause on the other end. He sounded tired, more annoyed than panicked. "There's a problem with one of the penthouse reservations at the Midtown Lux. The flagship. It was booked under your name and your credit card was used." I felt a sudden tightness in my chest. That didn't make sense. I hadn't used that card in months. "Wait, what?" "You're saying someone used my card, used it and checked in. The guest listed is Emily Donovan, with a +1. My mouth went dry. My first instinct was denial. That had to be a mistake. There had to be another Emily Donovan in Chicago, maybe even one married to a Connor Donovan. Maybe this was a system glitch. But I knew better. Deep down, I already knew the truth. "You sure it's her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "I had security pull the footage. It's her, Connor. She checked in 2 hours ago with some guy, younger, athletic. I don't know him." I stood up, heart pounding. The room around me shifted like the floor had tilted slightly. "Send me the footage," I said. "Already did. Check your email." Logan's voice softened slightly. "Look, man, I wouldn't call you if I wasn't sure. And I wouldn't bring this up if it wasn't using your card. But something's off. Thought you should know." "Thanks," I said quietly and hung up. I opened the laptop on the kitchen counter and pulled up the email. There it was. An MP4 file named security_footage_12 the floor_penthouse check-in. My finger hovered over the trackpad before I clicked play. And there she was. Emily in a sleek black dress, hair done like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Her arm was looped through a man's. Tall, maybe early 30s, lean build, dressed in a tight button-up and jeans like he walked out of a fitness ad. He carried both their bags, laughing like they were on vacation. They looked comfortable, intimate. She had never looked at me like that. The video stopped just as they entered the elevator. I sat there, still staring at the blank screen. My mind was a fog, running 1,000 thoughts and none at all. My credit card, my name, the Midtown Lux penthouse. The same penthouse where I had proposed to her 9 years ago, rose petals scattered across the sweet champagne waiting on ice. Was this some kind of sick joke? I opened the banking app. There it was, a $17,800 charge from Logan's hotel chain. No fraud alert, no flags, just another transaction from a husband to his wife. Except she wasn't supposed to be using that card. We'd been separated for 3 months now, unofficially. She moved out with the excuse of needing space to think. I honored that. I gave her time. I didn't push. I figured maybe we had a chance. Maybe space would bring clarity. Clarity was checking into a penthouse with another man. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking, but my mind was oddly calm. Too calm. I stood there in the kitchen of my rental apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then I picked up the phone and called Logan back. "Can you hold that room for another day? Don't alert her. Don't let security say anything. Just keep things running as if everything's normal." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." I hung up and walked over to the living room window. The Chicago skyline blinked in the distance. Somewhere in one of those towers, Emily was curled up in a bed I once paid for, with a man who didn't know what he was walking into. I breathed in slowly. This wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak, it was something else, something deeper. A switch had flipped, and I was done pretending. Let her enjoy the sweet, let her drink the champagne, let her believe she's winning. I'd let her dig her own grave in that $80 million penthouse. By the time the second video came through, I was already back on the couch, the lights-off laptop balanced on my knees. Logan had sent a follow-up, no message, just the file. I clicked play. This footage was from the security camera inside the elevator. She was still wearing that same black dress, only now I could see her face more clearly. She looked radiant, almost glowing. That smile, that lightness in her posture, it didn't belong to someone just seeking clarity. It belonged to someone who had moved on. The man with her leaned down and whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, throwing her head back like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all day. Then she kissed him, right there, in the elevator, like it was theirs. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just watched. The camera angle shifted, switching to the penthouse hallway. Room 1201. I knew that room better than I knew my own hand. I had designed parts of it during the hotel's renovation. I had picked the marble, the lighting, even the damn door handles. They reached the door and the man punched in a code. My code. The one Emily and I used when we stayed there last anniversary. My jaw tightened. The guy's name popped up in the hotel record later that night when Logan sent me the check-in registry. Jake Summers. I knew that name. It wasn't just some fling she met at a bar. He was our personal trainer, the one we both used when we were trying to have a baby 3 years ago, the one I introduced her to. I had brought him into our lives. I sat back, the realization stinging more than I wanted to admit. Emily didn't just cheat. She used my card, booked a suite I proposed to her in, and brought a man I trusted into my bed. I got up and walked to the kitchen again, not sure what I was looking for. Water, maybe. Something to pour the nausea out of my throat. I opened the fridge and stared inside. Nothing looked appealing. I grabbed a glass and filled it from the tap. My hand was steadier now. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, cold, intentional. Jake must have known that penthouse was mine. He'd been there once for drinks after a fundraiser. He had complimented the view. I remember Emily laughing at one of his jokes while I poured wine. I wondered what lies she had told him. Maybe she said we were divorced. Maybe she claimed the card was hers. Maybe he didn't care either way. The next morning, Logan called again. "You still want me to keep the room under wraps?" "Yeah. Let her have the illusion. Don't interfere, but I need everything. Footage, receipts, timestamps, all of it. You got it." Before he hung up, Logan paused. "By the way, you want to know what suite she's in?" I already knew. Room 1201. The same room where I knelt on one knee and asked her to spend forever with me. Where she cried and said yes. Where we drank champagne until the sun came up. That suite was never just another room. It was ours. Now it was theirs. I walked to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out the worn leather notebook where I kept every major decision of the last decade. Business, home renovations, vacation plans. I flipped to a blank page and wrote 2 names at the top. Emily Donovan, Jake Summers. Below it, I drew a small box. Then I started a list. First on the list was Harper Ellis. She was my closest friend from college and, more importantly, a brilliant divorce attorney with an investigator's instinct. We hadn't spoken in months, not since Emily and I started drifting. But I knew if anyone could cut through the noise, it was Harper. I dialed her number, pacing the living room. It was barely past 8 a.m., but she picked up on the second ring. "Connor Donovan," she said, dragging my name out like I was trouble. "Haven't heard from you since your birthday." "What's going on?" I didn't bother with small talk. "I need you to help me look into Emily. Financials, hotel stays, transfers, everything." Silence. Harper wasn't one to jump into something without seeing the fire. Then her voice softened. What did she do? She used my credit card to book the Lux Penthouse. She's there right now, with Jake Summers. Your trainer, Jake Summers, the very one. Damn. All right, give me 24 hours. She hung up. No further questions. That's what I liked about Harper. She didn't need the drama to get to the truth. The next day, she called back. I answered before the first ring ended. You were right, Harper said. She's been moving money for the past 6 weeks. Not huge sums at first, just a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But last week there was a $58,000 wire transfer to a shell company in Delaware. Company name is LMX Holdings. Never heard of it. You wouldn't have. It's newly registered. And guess who the managing officer is? Jake Summers. My blood chilled. That was embezzlement, plain and simple. How much total? Including the latest transfer, just under $110,000. From your joint accounts, the ones you forgot to shut down. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I could picture Emily at our old dining room table, logged into our shared online banking, moving money like she was transferring laundry. There's more, Harper continued. I pulled the last 3 months of hotel stays. She used your card 3 separate times, once at a spa resort in Lake Geneva, once at a cabin in Colorado Springs, and now the Penthouse, all booked under her maiden name and yours. She wanted it to look legitimate, I said. Exactly, like you were traveling together. I leaned against the window, watching the city wake up beneath me. Cars moved like insects, oblivious to the private war unraveling above them. Can you freeze the accounts? I already filed a motion. You'll need to sign it today. Also, I suggest we go full documentation mode. Paper trail, photos, statements. Anything she can't spin in court. I'll start now. One more thing, Harper added. I looked into Jake's business history. His fitness brand, Fake. He has a license, but it expired 2 years ago. And the LLC he listed on his website doesn't exist anymore, so he's operating illegally. Yep. And Emily transferred assets to him knowingly. That makes her complicit. I didn't respond. I just stared at my notebook. Her name, his name. The box I'd drawn was now filling with lines. I opened a new note on my phone. I started logging dates, transaction IDs, IP addresses. Every receipt Logan sent me, every confirmation email Harper forwarded. Then I texted Logan. Upgrade their room service. Flowers, champagne, anniversary level treatment. Whatever they ask for, say yes. Logan replied with a simple thumbs up. Let them feel like they won. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. That would be too easy, too merciful. This wasn't about catching her in the act anymore. This was about proving she planned it. I pulled an old USB drive from the drawer and started uploading the files. The evidence, the timeline, the lies. The flash drive blinked red as it copied. By the time it was done, I was ready. The first move wasn't confrontation. It was documentation. It was war. Saturday morning, I drove out to Winnetka to pick up Sophie. Gloria Bennett's place sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac wrapped in white roses and good intentions. Her porch was lined with neatly trimmed shrubs and American flags. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, but it never felt like home. I parked at the curb and took a breath before stepping out. The moment I rang the bell, Gloria opened the door with her usual forced smile. She was wearing a navy sweater set and pearls like always. Connor, she said flatly, she's upstairs finishing breakfast. Come in. I followed her inside, the scent of cinnamon rolls hanging in the air. Sophie's laughter trickled down the staircase. That sound always disarmed me. She was my anchor. Gloria didn't waste time. You know, she said, pouring herself coffee, I just don't understand why things had to get this messy. Emily's been through a lot. I nodded silently. She continued, setting her cup down a little too hard. Maybe if you had been more attentive. She needed emotional presence, Connor, not just a paycheck and a house. I stared at the family portraits lining her hallway. Most of them were of Emily. None included me. Gloria's voice sharpened. Frankly, I'm not surprised. A woman can only hold out for so long without being seen. And let's be honest, this depression thing of yours, it made things harder. I stayed quiet. Let her say what she needed. You should have fought for her harder, she added, almost like an afterthought. Maybe she wouldn't have drifted. I wanted to laugh or scream, but I just stood there, arms crossed, letting the judgment roll off like smoke. If she knew the truth, she didn't care. Footsteps padded down the stairs. Sophie appeared, backpack slung over her shoulder, holding her stuffed dinosaur. Daddy. I knelt and pulled her into my arms. She smelled like lavender shampoo and syrup. Ready to go, I asked. She nodded. Gloria hovered behind her, arms crossed. Then as I stood to leave, she cleared her throat. Connor, wait. I turned. She walked past me to a drawer in the hallway table, pulled something out and held it toward me. It was a photo, printed, glossy. I took it. It was Emily and Jake, at a lake house, mid-laugh, wrapped in towels. They looked like newlyweds. I stared at it. How long have you had this? I asked. A while, she said softly. I didn't want to show you. I thought maybe it would blow over. Families fall apart when people go digging. I thought. Maybe she'd come back to her senses. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. I put the photo in my coat pocket, picked up Sophie's bag, and walked out the door. The air was colder than I expected. Sophie climbed into the back seat, already humming to her cartoons. I stood by the driver's side, looking back at Gloria's house. She had known. She'd seen it all and said nothing. Protected her daughter. Ignored the rot. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and merged back onto the quiet street. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was isolation. Even the people who claimed to love you would hand you the knife. By the time we pulled into the city, Sophie was asleep in the back seat. Her stuffed dinosaur tucked under her arm, face turned toward the window. I carried her up to my apartment, tucked her into the guest bedroom, and closed the door behind me. Then I grabbed my phone. Logan answered before the first ring finished. I looked deeper into your boy Jake Summers, he said. You're not going to like this. I leaned against the kitchen counter, jaw tight. Tell me. He's got a sealed record in Illinois. Juvenile, so most of it's locked, but there's a note in the financial fraud division. A plea deal. He ran a fake investment scheme in college, took 40 grand from 3 families before one of them pressed charges. Jesus. There's more. 3 weeks ago, Emily transferred partial ownership of her stake in the Velvet Room to a new name. Guess who? Jake. Of course. Her bar lounge had been her pride since she opened it 6 years ago. It started as a weekend side hustle, became a chain. She once said she'd never let it go unless it was pried from her cold, dead hands. Guess she changed her mind, I muttered. Logan continued. I got someone on the inside to pull the docs. The transfer was quiet, no press, but the records are clear. She gave him 49%, enough to give him veto power. And since she signed over controlling votes in some locations, technically, he has operational authority over 2 of the 5 venues. She's building him an empire, I said, or laundering his past through her brand. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Logan added. Look, I know this guy's type. Charming, quick-talking, but fake. This isn't love. It's a heist. I know. He hesitated. You want backup? I already knew what I had to do. No, but I need a name. Jake's brother, Blake Summers. I remember he worked in property management. Logan didn't ask why. He just said he'd text me the number. 2 hours later, I sat in my car outside a brick office complex in Skokie, Blake Summers' real estate etched on a frosted glass door. I stepped inside. The receptionist buzzed him and waved me through. Blake stood when I entered. Early 40s, tall, stockier than his brother. Hair graying at the sides, eyes sharp. "Connor Donovan," he said. "You're the husband." I nodded. He gestured to a seat. We didn't shake hands. "So what's this about?" he asked. "Jake, and the bar chain my wife just gifted him." Blake's mouth tightened. I figured. I told him everything. The money, the hotel, the transfers, the lies. I expected skepticism. Instead, he leaned back and sighed. "He did it to me too. 3 years ago. Used my license to forge documents, transferred a resort property under his LLC. Claimed I gifted it. Took me 2 years and 30 grand to win it back. You press charges number family. My dad begged me not to. Said Jake needed help, not prison." I nodded. "That tracks." Blake rubbed his jaw. "You got proof stacks, then I'm in. You want to bury him or expose him both?" Blake cracked a half smile. "Let's make sure he doesn't do this to anyone else." We shook hands. It was the first time in weeks I didn't feel completely alone. They had no idea they were walking into a performance. Emily wore the black satin dress from our 10th anniversary. She must have thought it poetic. Jake, oblivious as ever, adjusted his cufflinks like he belonged in that penthouse. The dining table had been reset for 2, gleaming with candlelight and chilled Dom Perignon. Dinner was served with the elegance I'd instructed. Lobster tail, truffle risotto, chocolate soufflé. Every detail designed to mimic our wedding night, down to the orchids lining the walls. I watched from my laptop as they toasted. Jake leaned back smug and loud while Emily's smile flickered every time her eyes landed on something too familiar. The waiter returned with a final delivery. A silver tray, a white box tied with the same blue ribbon I had used on Emily's birthday gifts. "What's this?" Jake asked. Emily shook her head. "I didn't order anything." "Compliments of the suite," the waiter replied and left. Jake laughed. "Maybe they're thanking us for staying so long." He tore the ribbon off and lifted the lid. His smirk vanished in seconds. Inside stacked neatly photocopies of credit card transactions, flight bookings, wire transfers from Emily's business accounts to a shell company in Jake's name. And then the photos. Jake in compromising positions with at least 3 different women. One on a yacht in Miami. One backstage at a lounge in Los Angeles. One in a hotel elevator with her skirt halfway up. Emily reached in and pulled out the papers. Her face tightened with each turn. Then she saw the last document. The divorce papers, signed by me. Jake stood up so fast his wine glass toppled. "What the hell is this?" The TV on the wall flickered to life. The screen stayed dark, but audio played. Jake's voice. "She's the last jackpot. Once I flip the shares and drain her out, I'm gone. Mexico or Bali, I don't care." Emily dropped the pages. Her breathing hitched. Jake lunged for the remote, but the screen now showed footage of him pacing, phone in hand, saying those exact words 2 nights ago. Jake turned pale. "That's fake." "Someone edited this," Emily whispered. "You used me." Jake ignored her, frantically scrolling through his phone. "You said you loved me." She was shaking. The soufflé on her plate sat untouched. Jake's phone rang and he answered without looking. His face twisted further as Logan's voice came through the speaker. "Congratulations, Mr. Summers. You've just gone viral. That footage streaming to every screen in the lobby, also to her attorney. And ours. Jake threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the bar. Emily sat down again, staring at the documents. She looked older now, like the truth had aged her a decade. "You were going to sell me out," she said quietly. "You were never going to stay." Jake didn't answer. He was pacing again, muttering, calculating his next escape. But the walls were closing in. Emily turned to the door, slowly, her heels echoing across the marble floor. She didn't even glance back. In the hallway, the camera caught her wiping tears from her face with the back of her hand. But it wasn't sorrow. It was fury, embarrassment. I closed my laptop and leaned back. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about revelation. She saw the truth. So did everyone else. The first call came from Gloria. Her voice cracked through the phone like dry leaves underfoot. "Connor," she said between sobs, "it was real. All of it." She was crying in a way I'd never heard before, not even at her husband's funeral. She kept repeating herself. "I didn't want to believe. I thought maybe it was stress or confusion. But that video," he said it like we meant nothing. "Gloria," I replied, keeping my voice even. "I know you wanted to protect her." "No," she snapped, her voice sharp with shame. "I wanted to protect myself from embarrassment, from facing the fact that my daughter could be capable of something like this." I didn't say anything. The silence on my end stretched long enough for her to fill. "I thought you were the problem." I believed her. Every story, every complaint. I sat at that kitchen table and nodded while she spun lies about you. And now I know. Then her voice broke again. I saw her face when she walked through that door. She didn't say anything, just slammed it shut and went straight to her room. Like a ghost, like she'd been hollowed out. The next call was from Sophie. "Dad." Her voice was quiet. She sounded much older than 14. "Hey, sweetheart. I saw the video," she said. I closed my eyes. "We're TikTok. Someone tagged the hotel. I recognized the Penthouse." I took a breath. "Are you okay?" She was silent. Then was all of it true? I didn't want to say yes. I didn't want to be the one who shattered whatever image of her mother she still held on to. But I owed her the truth, most of it. The stuff about Jake and the money. "Yes, that part's true." There was a pause. "Good," she said finally, "because she told me you didn't love me anymore, that you were going to leave." My stomach twisted. "Sophie, that was never true." "I know." Her voice was calm. "I believe you now." After we hung up, I just sat there for a while, phone in hand, lights off, the echo of my daughter's belief more powerful than any victory. Later that evening, Gloria showed up at my apartment. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stood in the hallway for a full minute before speaking. "I should have listened to you. I should have seen through her." "You're her mother," I said. "It's not your fault for trusting her." She shook her head. "No, it's my fault for watching her change and pretending she hadn't, for seeing her lie, manipulate, twist the truth and calling it strength instead of selfishness." She handed me an envelope. I didn't open it right away. "It's everything I have," she said. "Emails, bank alerts, messages she asked me to delete. I didn't. I kept them. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me knew this day would come." I nodded. "Thank you." Gloria took a step closer. "You know what hurts most?" I looked at her. "I taught her loyalty. I taught her to fight for what matters. And she used those lessons to become better at betrayal." Then she hugged me. Tight. Like she was trying to squeeze forgiveness out of me. I didn't hug her back right away. But I did eventually. The next morning came with a different kind of silence. Not the silence of defeat or isolation, but the heavy quiet that falls before a storm hits. I stood by the window with a cup of coffee in my hand, watching the city blink into life, knowing this day would redraw the lines of everything. Harper arrived just after 8. She didn't knock, just walked in like she always did. She looked sharp, focused, and utterly exhausted. "We're ready," she said, setting a black folder down on my kitchen table. "This is everything. Wire transfers, fake invoices, the entire path of dirty money. Blake's people trace the accounts offshore. There's a yacht in the Bahamas and a villa in Tulum registered to shell companies owned by Jake." I opened the folder. Page after page, detail after detail, a full map of betrayal drawn in bank statements and legal paperwork. Jake hadn't just siphoned funds, he'd built an empire of deceit, and Emily had helped him sign every brick into place. Half an hour later, Blake knocked on the door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but was buzzing with energy. "I got a call from a friend at the IRS, the kind of guy who doesn't ask twice if he smells blood in the water. We've got a sit-down at noon. What's the goal?" I asked. "Bring it all. Names, numbers, motives. Don't just accuse him of theft. Show them a criminal enterprise." We arrived at the federal building with copies of everything. Harper led the briefing while Blake and I supported. The IRS agent, a stone-faced man named Darnell Evans, didn't blink once as we spoke. He took notes in silence, only interrupting to ask for timestamps or connections between transfers. When Harper laid out how Brent Simmons had altered property titles and delayed investigations, Darnell finally spoke. "We've had our eye on Mr. Simmons for months. This just gave us the push we needed." After we left the building, Blake let out a slow breath. "That guy's a hammer. When he swings, people scatter." By 5 o'clock, the hammer dropped. Brent was arrested in the parking lot of his firm. A grainy video of him in cuffs was already trending online by dinner time. Harper called and said the DOJ had just issued a formal notice of investigation into Jake and his connected entities. An hour later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Emily's accounts are frozen," Harper said. "Personal and business." The compliance flags went up fast. She won't get so much as a latte until they're done digging. What's the timeline? Could be weeks, months. Depends on how loud Jake squeals. I hung up and sat back on the couch. For the first time in this entire disaster, I felt the tide shifting. Then the news hit cable networks. Vegas businessman under federal investigation for fraud and laundering. Jake's face appeared on screen, followed by images of his clubs and old interviews where he boasted about starting from nothing. The public narrative was turning fast. "They haven't named Emily," Logan texted, "but her lounge is listed in the reports. She won't stay anonymous for long," I replied. That night, I opened a bottle of the scotch I'd been saving. Not for celebration, but for clarity. I needed to think through the next step. Custody, reputation, the final divorce proceedings. None of this was over yet, but when Sophie texted me a simple heart emoji followed by, "Saw the news, proud of you, Dad," it felt like a victory I could hold on to. I stared out the window again. This time the silence wasn't heavy. It was earned. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and headlines, but tonight I had the law on my side, and I finally had peace in my corner. The boardroom was quiet, the kind of silence that felt like breath held before a leap. Papers shuffled, pens clicked, and at the head of the table I sat across from the man about to take over my past. The buyer, a seasoned investor named Terrence Dalton, had run his fingers down the contract with surgical precision. "You sure about this, Connor?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. "I'm ready to let it go." Terrence signed. Then I signed. With those strokes of ink, I was no longer a co-owner of Ember. Harper stood behind me, arms crossed. "You just offloaded the biggest liability of your divorce. Smart move." We walked out into the crisp air of downtown Vegas. I breathed easier. The weight I had carried for years wasn't gone, but it had shifted. The sale meant I was severing the last joint tie with Emily. Whatever she tried next wouldn't include my name. Back at Logan's office, he handed me a folder marked Acquisition Plan. I know what you're thinking, but this is clean, legal, above board. You sell your old stake, I help you buy the rest. With Terrence as a silent partner, you're in control again. I looked up at him. You really believe in this? He laughed. I believe in you. Plus, I don't want Jake crawling back and trying to stake a claim when he's out on bail. The papers were already prepared. With Logan's financial backing and Harper's oversight, I bought out the remaining shares that weren't seized or frozen. We installed a new board, vetted every manager, and ran a full audit of the financials. Ember was clean now. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was constantly watching my back. On Wednesday, Harper called to say the federal freeze had gone through. Emily's name was blocked from every Ember-related account. Jake's entire business portfolio was under IRS lock. Neither of them could touch what I now owned outright. Friday night, I returned to the Penthouse, the same suite where everything began unraveling. This time, the place was silent, pristine. No lingering scent of betrayal, just neutral air and city lights. I walked the halls alone, remembering the first time I brought Emily here. She'd danced barefoot in the living room, spinning with a champagne flute, laughing like the world would never get its claws in us. I stepped out onto the terrace. Vegas glittered beneath me, humming with promise. It looked the same, but I didn't. I had clawed my way through wreckage to stand here again. The door behind me creaked. Logan stepped out holding 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch. One last drink before you close the chapter, he asked. I smiled. Only if it's the good kind. He poured and we toasted quietly. To survival, to clarity, to starting over. You really went through hell, man, he said after a while. I'm proud of how you came out the other side. It's not over, I replied. Not yet. The custody hearings start next month. Logan nodded. One battle at a time, but at least now you're fighting from higher ground. After he left, I sat alone, feet propped on the railing, letting the cool wind settle around me. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Just a photo of her science fair project, followed by a simple "Hope you're proud of me." I typed back, I'm proud of you every day. I didn't hit send right away. I stared at her message for a while, wondering how many more moments I'd missed while caught in the storm. But then I pressed send, and it felt like a door had quietly clicked open. No audience, no applause, just forward motion. I had done what I came to do. This was my turning point, and I was still standing. I'd known it in my bones long before the proof arrived. I sensed it in the way her eyes no longer lingered on mine, and how her voice dropped whenever Jake's name came up. I didn't need a confession. I needed confirmation. So I built a plan, one thread at a time. 8 months is a long time to pretend, to smile at dinners, to kiss someone who's already halfway gone. But I did it every day. I logged receipts, recorded dates, tracked unusual spending. Harper guided me through what was legal and what was smart. Logan, always pragmatic, helped shift company assets under secure umbrellas. I had to be methodical, not vindictive. The night she signed that bar equity over to Jake, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I printed the deed, framed it, and placed it in a box labeled Departure. Because that was the moment I left, emotionally, spiritually. All that remained was the exit. I took weekly meetings with Harper to ensure every possible counter from her side was locked down. She wouldn't touch Sophie's trust. She wouldn't touch mine. We set up trigger clauses in business contracts that removed her name upon any breach. She didn't know, of course, not yet. I even recorded a personal statement, time-stamped, notarized, filed, just in case she tried to twist the story later. I wasn't preparing for war. I was securing peace, a clean slate that didn't require revenge porn headlines or tabloid drama. Then came the final piece. I wanted the penthouse, not to reclaim it, to reclaim myself. I paid off the final lien on it, made sure the ownership trail was unbreakable. Harper helped renegotiate a clause in the building's policy. Sole access to the top floor was now limited to title holders. Jake couldn't return, not legally. Then I turned to the emotional audit. I went through old emails, deleted them all. Every anniversary video, gone. Our wedding playlist, erased. Photos from our honeymoon in the Adirondacks, transferred to a hard drive, sealed and sent to a lawyer for archiving just in case Sophie wanted them someday. I wasn't purging her. I was reclaiming me. On a crisp Friday evening, I stood on the rooftop of that $80 million penthouse alone. No event, no guest list, just me, a bottle of whiskey, and silence. I watched the city breathe beneath me. Watched cabs weave like fireflies between towers. Watched a life I almost lost blink back into view. Emily was no longer my wife. She was a lesson, one I would never forget. In the middle of that quiet, my phone vibrated. It was Harper. "Just got word," she said. "IRS accepted all filings. Jake's assets are frozen. Emily's appeal got denied. You're officially untouchable." "Thank you," I said, voice flat, calm. "You okay?" I looked at the skyline, then back at my reflection in the glass. I think I'm finally good. After the call ended, I sat on the cold stone-edged legs, dangling over a city that didn't owe me anything. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. Emily hadn't just broken trust, she'd burned the blueprint of our future. And I had rebuilt from scratch. The man I was 8 months ago, grieving, panicked, drowning, he was gone. The man I became stood taller, not because he won, but because he endured. The plan worked, and I was still standing, more myself than ever before. A breeze swept across the rooftop, tugging gently at my jacket. I closed my eyes and let the wind pass through me. It didn't feel cold anymore, it felt like permission. Somewhere deep down I had feared becoming bitter. I had worried this process would harden me, but it didn't. It refined me. I got up and walked to the edge, looking down at the strip. Neon lights, too bright to be real, flickered promises to strangers. I thought about how many stories were unraveling down there, how many betrayals were just beginning. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was ready. I left the bottle on the ledge untouched since the first sip. A symbol of the night, I chose clarity over chaos. When I stepped into the elevator and pressed the ground floor button, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I was no longer chasing closure. I had it. It was time to start living again. Not for revenge, not for survival. For me. The next morning, Sophie and I sat quietly at a small cafe overlooking the Chicago River. It was early, the air brisk, the sky a soft silver. She stirred her hot chocolate without saying a word, eyes fixed on the steam rising above the cup. I watched her, letting the silence stretch between us until she finally broke it. "Dad," she said, eyes still down. "Are you okay?" I smiled. Not the polite, rehearsed smile I'd worn through the past months, but something real, something earned. "Better than I've been in a long time," I replied. She nodded slowly, then leaned her head on my shoulder. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just let the weight of her trust settle in. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Jake Summers had been sentenced to 6 years probation and ordered to pay $2.5 million in restitution. His assets were frozen, his company gutted, his name scorched across every business headline. Emily's name appeared alongside his, not as a co-conspirator but close enough to destroy her brand. She had been dropped by sponsors, clients, even friends. I heard she had moved back in with her mother. Gloria hadn't returned my calls, not that I blamed her. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Emily. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I hovered over it, thought about opening it, then hit delete. No hesitation, no second thoughts. There was nothing she could say that I needed to hear. No explanation would reverse the pain, the betrayal, the 8 months of living beside a stranger. Forgiveness wasn't a bridge she could cross with words. I walked with Sophie down the Riverwalk, pointing out boats and tourists and dogs in little sweaters. She laughed when one licked her hand. Her laughter was soft but whole. That night I sat on my apartment balcony. Same view, different eyes. I didn't miss the penthouse. I didn't miss her. What I missed was myself, and I had finally found him again. I took out my phone and recorded one final message. Not for court, not for Harper, for me. "Sometimes," I said, looking into the camera, "justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from silence, from restraint, from not becoming what hurt you." I paused, then smiled gently. "You ask me if I'd do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing." I ended the recording, uploaded nothing, saved it to my private archive. Then I poured myself a drink, raised my glass to the skyline and whispered, "Goodbye, Emily." The next chapter of my life didn't have her name on it. It had mine. A few weeks later, I returned to the office for the first time in almost a year. My desk was just how I had left it, untouched but waiting. I ran my fingers over the plans and sketches I once believed I had lost all passion for. But that day the lines spoke to me again. Possibility, creation, a future. Logan stopped by to check in, bringing with him the finalized contract from the board of Ember. The business was now officially mine, fully separated from Emily's involvement. Harper had overseen every detail, clean, bulletproof. Logan clapped me on the back and said, "You're not just back, Connor, you're better." At home, Sophie had started painting again. She left little drawings on the fridge, some signed, some anonymous, but unmistakably hers. I kept everyone. I started therapy again, too. Not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to be again. My therapist said healing isn't a straight line. Some days you stumble, some days you run, but every day I walked forward. One night, Sophie and I stood on the rooftop of Logan's hotel, the same rooftop that once felt like a battleground. Now it was just sky. She asked if I'd ever get married again. "Maybe," I said, "but not until I know I can trust again. And that'll take time." She seemed satisfied with that. Then she grabbed my hand and pointed to a star. "Make a wish, Dad." I did. But it wasn't for love or revenge or redemption. It was for peace. If this story hit home, if you've ever had to walk away from something that once meant everything, share your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent and then speak when it matters most.